Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by someone who's truly lived and breathed what it means to be in the business of people. She's built her career at the intersection of talent leadership and scaling, helping organizations grow not just quickly, but intentionally. She's led and developed high-performing teams. She's shaped people's strategies. She's partnered with leaders who believe that real businesses' impact starts with the people they bring on. What makes her story especially compelling, and part of the reason why I wanted to reach out to her in the first place, that she's been inside some of the most iconic companies that we've all known over the years, from Apple, where she helped scale it from 5 billion to 182 billion, LinkedIn from 2 billion to 8 billion, and Slack from 630 million to 1.5 billion. It's a lot of billions. Along the way, she's been part of two landmark acquisitions, Salesforce to Slack and Microsoft to LinkedIn, and it's given her this unique real-world perspective on navigating change, complexity, and transformation at a truly global scale. But the focus of today's conversation, be it a large company or you're a very small scale-up, startup, however you want to call it, it's how can we actually do more with less? So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcoming today's guest, the founder of Penfield Talent, Mary Price. So thanks so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. I loved and appreciate that introduction so much. So thank you.
Well, your achievements speak for themselves, and it makes life writing these a lot easier when I have the information. But it's an unbelievable resume you have and career, and I'm excited to kind of peel back not just these huge scale ups, but like I said, really giving people clear actions, because I firmly believe we are definitely leading down the route of more of less. And you've got this exposure in multiple places that hopefully we can dive into. But before we get into the nitty gritty, if you've listened to the more recent episodes or listened to anything in the podcast, the first question is always different from your podcast episode. So your one is going to be, where do you see the biggest challenge for recruiters that we need to overcome in the next 3 years, and why?
This is obviously going to be an AI answer.
That's fine. We can deal with AI.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone is aware that AI is going to be changing the world, the way we work, how we do things, all of that. I think the question we have to ask ourselves and the challenge is going to be, how does it add the value? Where does it actually make me better at my job? Where does it make things easier? Where does it make things sort of redundant? Where does it make the company money? Because so much of what we do in recruiting is about helping these companies achieve product roadmap, revenue targets as well, right? Hiring on time, hiring the right people, the right seat, the right bus. And so I think the challenge is going to be, there's a lot of noise right now about, you and I were even talking about it, the other day. It's like I read this New York Times article where this guy has started and ran a company that is doing $1.8 billion with 2 employees.
Yeah.
And so
Mental.
it's mental. And this is the world that a lot of people are going to try to be in. But the question and the challenge will be, what people do you need to actually be doing the work, and where's the value? And so I think the challenge for recruiters is going to be, how am I bringing value to this relationship, to the company, in finding the right people and in connecting humans, and reminding them that not all of this can be AI'd. And I don't know, honestly, I say reminding them, I don't know that we're going to need to remind as much as people will probably feel it. They'll probably make decisions to reduce teams, and then they'll realize, I'm actually not finding the right people, because a resume doesn't also equal connection, Yeah.
I 100% agree, by the way. I'm seeing more and more of these companies, and especially a lot of the early stage businesses I'm working with. When I'm speaking with the CTOs or CEOs, they're expressing that we don't want a huge bloated engineering team anymore. We want less is more. We want higher quality people who can bounce around, wear multiple hats. And I think sometimes there's this misconception that we're trying to just get more for less in terms of paying people, but I don't necessarily myself see it that way. I think there's more ownership, more impact, and it's about getting, from kind of what we shared the other day, the right attitude, the right people in place. But you're coming from experiences of being inside super intense periods of growth and change, like acquisitions, large scale ups. When everything is moving super fast, when there is clearly a pressure to hire, exceptional talent, when you step into these places, how do you actually understand who is the right person for that position, or the right attitude for the company in that really intense period where it's just sometimes bums on seats, as it were? How do you maintain that element of, no, we need to really get the right people here?
Yeah. Well, there's two different ways I can answer that question. One is, do we have the right people on the team to assess those people that we need to hire all across the company? And
Mm.
then the second piece is, how are we assessing for the right attitude? So I would start first with recruiting. What I've found is that there's a host of things that you can look at within recruiting. You can look at offer acceptance rates. You can look at, attrition on certain teams, CSAT scores to see like how your recruiting team is performing. But I think one of the biggest distinctions is what you said, and it is attitude. And anytime I've gone in, and I'd give this advice for anyone taking on a new team or having to go through hyper growth or talent transformation because of AI, is to take a good look at your team and to spend a lot of time with everybody and try to understand, why are they here? What keeps them interested in the job, in recruiting, in the job here? There are a lot of people, I think, that are staying where they are because the market is challenging. That's not a good
Mm.
reason. It needs to be deeper than that, connected to the mission, believing in what we're trying to do and accomplish together. And so I think that so much of that comes down to attitude and mindset and perspective. I also try to get to know everyone on my team and what is their why? What is their deeper reason for doing the work that they do? Is it just to pay the bills? Is it because they want to grow, they want to learn, they want to develop? And how do I then, as the leader of the team, try to think about how we can create those meaningful experiences for them, also while achieving our business goals? The other thing in terms of, hiring the right person, it is coming down to efficiency. I think some things have really changed, and startups in a lot of ways are getting this right. They don't have these deep pockets and these crazy budgets to just hire unlimited amounts of people. And many companies aren't doing that anyway. You look at Oracle layoffs, you look at what happened with Block and Meta and all of these companies. And when they're hiring, I think what's really different and what I've seen to be very helpful is to really start with, what is the work to be done? A very simple question that so many people overlook. They get bombarded with, oh my gosh, we just need headcount. Let's just throw bodies at the problem. But if you break it down into actually what is the work to be done and take this extra step and look at quarter by quarter, what do we need to achieve on this roadmap? You'll be able to see, do we actually need a contractor? Is this short term? Is this long term? Is this actually an FTE? Is it just a project? And how can we do this? And also asking themselves the question, like, where does AI play into this? What can we bot with this? The other thing is that when you do get to that point of deciding, hey, yeah, we do need to hire someone, I think it doesn't benefit anyone from sugarcoating the situation. What I've found is that it's best to be direct and honest. If it's a shit show, say it's a shit show, because you want people that want to get into the arena, roll up their sleeves, and help clean this up. If
Mm.
you don't say that and you end up hiring someone who doesn't doesn't want to work, there's so much right now about 996 and those crazy schedules. That is going to be what's required at some of these companies. And so I think being really honest and then testing against a person's mindset around things like that, looking for evidence of how they have committed to that kind of work or address those kinds of problems, and just looking for like a clear track record is really important.
By the way, I smiled when you was talking about the brutal honesty, because I think that is our job, as the gatekeepers to the hiring managers in talent, is to be transparent about really what's going on, why we're hiring, what the problems really are. I actually had a customer of mine that he didn't want me to share the hours. They do not 996 intense, but they do intense for Berlin, shall we say. And he was like, "Look, don't sell it. Don't tell them it's not a benefit to what we're doing. I'll do it in the call. I'm like, no, you need to let me tell them, because otherwise you're wasting your time, you're wasting their time. That's not fair. They love the project, but they've got to, they need flexibility, and you cannot offer them. I was like, I need to screen against it. I'm 110% behind you with that. So you should come back a little bit. You're
Yeah.
talking about, obviously, essentially workforce planning, right? Which is the element of doing the quarterly reviews. What do we need? Is it an FTE, a freelance project, etc.? So I know, obviously, come end of year, everyone and their nan in TA, if you're in a leadership role, is doing workforce planning, right? That is the period of like December through to February, depending on when your years are finishing. Usually you can't get hold of you guys because workforce planning. So you're taking it from the big goal then and breaking it down into quarters,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then
I think it's,
reviewing that with your I can say along the lines of the business goals. Where are we exceeding, behind? Where do we need? And are you pivoting as you're going through the year?
yeah, I think it depends on the company. I've worked at companies where they had a more mature workforce planning process, and they had a longer tail in terms of the budget and to be able to see how was the company performing. And then I've worked at startups where that conversation is changing every other week
Yeah.
on our affordability, our OpEx, our top line revenue coming in. And you're staying so much more dialed in because the margins are that much smaller. You don't have huge room for error, so the margin of error is tighter. Here's what I've found though, and I'm actually going to be posting an article about this today on my newsletter, but there for workforce planning, you really need to take a good look at your system. And if it is just finance and recruiting, you have missed two very important teams that need to also be involved in that conversation. So I call it the four legs of the stool. So whenever it comes down to workforce planning, headcount planning, and trying to make sure that we're going to hit our revenue targets and we're going to execute on our roadmap, talent is the number one priority. If that's true, which I would argue it is true, then you need to have recruiting in those meetings every week. Recruiting should actually be the one to bring everyone together. HR, finance, and the operating teams. So those four legs of the stool keep the stool from wobbling and making sure that they're all connected. What
Mhm.
I've done in the past, anytime I've gone in and started a new role, is immediately built the relationships with those other three teams and called us to come together in the spirit of execution and delivery for the company. So we'll start at the top. Finance has the budget. They allocate that to the departments. Those departments then go on and build their orgs, the org structure, maybe a reorg, maybe new teams. HR should be in those conversations as well with operations. Ideally, talent acquisition is there too, but that doesn't always happen because sometimes there's conversations about people at risk or performance or whatever it might be. But HR need to be in that conversation as well because they have that perspective and they can add in the attrition layer because it's not just, oh, we're going to hire 100 people.
Mm.
How many are you going to lose and how many do you need
Yeah.
to backfill? And then the key is, when do they need to start? This is what people miss all the time. All the time. And every time I've gone into a new recruiting org, they're always talking about hires. Oh, we need to hire 100 people. Okay, fine, sure. By when? What's the
Yesterday.
seasonality of that? Because that's not how finance works. When finance says 100 people, they're mapping 25 for Q1, 40 for Q2, and so on and so forth. And it matters because of ramp times,
Mhm.
because of expected revenue that's planned, because of other product release, whatever, right? There's a lot of work to that. If finance and HR and operations are not bringing TA into the conversation, here's where the oopsie and the gotcha happens is if you say we need to hire 100 people, but you have a talent team that is only staffed to hire 10, just making it up, obviously that's a huge delta. And what you're not accounting for is your recruiting team needs to ramp up also and onboard, whether it's contractors, FTEs, or an RPO, no matter what, there's still a learning curve, right? And an execution
Mhm.
timeline that wasn't considered for that team. So that's why those three. I didn't talk about ops. I'll say with ops real quick, specifically in sales, rev ops, sales ops. Again, they do the planning, they do the territories, the new teams. Engineering operations does similar with their pods. So that's why these four teams have got to stay in lockstep, in sync,
Mm.
um, as a unit so that they can execute together. And if you don't have that, you're going to fail. 100% of the time, you're going to fail and you're going to say, well, recruiting didn't do it. That's not exactly true. Everyone owns a part of the partnership together so that we can execute.
I guess having the right leaders in place in those departments helps bring the entire org on the same playing field. We know what we're going after. I guess that's
Mhm.
where we talk about the attitude as well. If you've got a blame culture where TA didn't do it or HR didn't do it, there's things that are going to naturally fall down over time because of that. But
Mhm.
have you got an example? I'm curious. You can name companies if you want. It's entirely up to you. Have you got an example where this has just gone horrendous? Like you've gone in and you've got all the best intentions. Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot here. You've got all the best intentions and it's just met with stonewall or, whatever the case is.
Um, I do. I do. Hmm. I would
But you're
say that,
prepared to say maybe
yeah,
the
yeah.
different question.
Well, well, let me put it this way. Every company I've worked for, it's gone the wrong way at some point. But I think that that's because something got dropped. Someone underestimated the importance of their leg in the stool
Hmm.
or someone else's. And so it happens. Even, I'll say this. When I was at Slack, I think this was done the best. We had a very close partnership with HR. We were constantly in communication with RevOps and Sales Ops. We all trusted each other and we had to because we were doing, 133% growth year over year, more than doubling the team. So we knew that was critical to execute and we did it. We
Mhm.
had our first, $100 million quarter. It was amazing. Um, but after a certain milestone and then a new headcount workforce plan that came out, the intensity wasn't there in the same way. And so certain things got dropped. There were certain misses in terms of like the headcount plan and clarity on our targets and our forecasting motion. And so you can have the flywheel going, but if you don't maintain it, then things can happen. I would also say that, to be honest with you, the group that I have seen struggle with this concept in my last three companies is finance for some reason. And their job is math. And I'm not
I was
saying
going
I
to
don't
say,
mean,
surely they'll be the ones that would want to know where as much as you can, where things are coming into place. And this isn't a blame game to anyone who's just stumbled upon this from finance by any means. Don't start
yeah,
hating on us. But
yeah,
surely that would seem like they're the ones who are probably trying to fight the good fight and get this going as much as anyone else.
yeah, you'd be surprised. I think what I've found is just a general sort of myopic focus on like OpEx and top line and not actually considering the whole system. And so that's where, it's like a body, you can't just walk, without your feet. It's like you need your feet. And so I think sometimes I've seen that as a miss, but I've also seen them, come around and get it. But then I've seen them not give information or not show up to the meeting. And, but then I've also seen them be the ones that are absolutely advocating for TA at the
Mm.
board meetings in meetings with the CFO if you don't have that relationship, or even if you do, they can speak the CFO's language. So, I don't want to say that it's just been like one shit show. I'll just say that in my last three companies, um, I've seen it go really well and I've seen it go off track, and then we have to get back on track, to be
Yeah.
fair, and it happens. But I think that you, as a leader in talent acquisition, cannot just default to HR being the workforce planning experts. You're going to get really stuck if you're not in those conversations and if you're not driving the conversation on the timeline, the math, the impact. We own our numbers. We should be the experts. And if you're not positioning yourself in that way and equipping yourself with the information, you're going to get disrespected. Also, to be honest with you, that's not business leader mindset. I think there's a difference there too that I just want to touch on. You can either operate as I'm a functional leader, I only think of my world, or you can shift your mindset to be I'm a business leader and I need to take into consideration the whole picture here, which is
Mm.
why I encourage every TA leader to stand up a four-legged stool meeting and have those functions literally be their best friends.
Four-legged stool meeting. If anyone has anything to take away, that. Once your blog goes live, because I'm thinking your blog will go live. If you're posting it today, it will definitely go live before we post this. Please share. I'll put it in the footnotes. Anyone who is listening goes, oh, that's interested. Find your way. I want to touch upon, because you mentioned in the first question about AI being a massive topic and the tools and all that kind of thing. But this also comes into a big element now of trying to do more with less. We've got the actual core system, and then we've got the systems we've built into the business. I had a very good conversation around testing the validity of tools, and some curious questions. This was way back in season 1. If anyone ever listened to it, a lady called Clara, fantastic episode to plug it back in. But we were talking about validity and testing, if a company's telling you absolute BS or not. For you, I am curious then, because you two are opposite ends of the world. Let's just test the hypothesis. Do you thinking the same? How do you kind of test to decide whether or not a tool is actually worth investing versus, yeah, it could be all right, you're nice to have, but actually we need that? What's kind of your, I guess, barometers?
I think for me the biggest thing is like, is this going to make the life of the recruiter easier so that they can actually recruit? And recruiting is an art. There's a science part to it for sure, right? There's math, there's numbers, there's conversions, there's ratios, but it genuinely is an art. We're professional matchmakers. And we are also in the business of sales. And I would argue that we have to sell twice. We have to sell the job to the candidate, and many of them just to get people interested. So that's number one. So you have to sell many times to get hook someone and get them into it. And then the second thing is you have to sell that or those candidates to the hiring team. And depending on how many decision makers you have, you're selling multiple times.
Hmm.
And to be honest, like I mean, you could sell a SaaS product, whatever, yeah. But and I'm not trying to minimize that. I'm married to a sales leader. Like I know how hard he works, and it is an art to do that too. I just think there's no more intimate sale in life than your job, because you're going to fundamentally change how you spend your time every day, who you spend it with, what you're bringing your talent and your time to. And
Hmm.
there's nothing more valuable than your time in your life. And so I just feel like, you know, I don't know. That's a little, I guess, a tangent there. But I would say that, how I decide if it's going to make people, if it's worth it, is it going to save them time so they're not just like doing admin work like calendaring? You should, of course, invest in Calendly or some type of scheduling tool. Absolutely. That's
I
ridiculous.
don't.
You don't?
I don't.
Oh my
I'll
gosh.
tell you why. Let's just take a
Yeah.
detour for a second. So
Detour.
the way I structure my workday in my calendar, I use chunking as my method. So I block out my days, and that's my diary. I'll remind myself what I'm doing on these days. And again, with the external side, I'm working quite a lot of different jobs. Definitely internal do the same thing, don't get me wrong. And I want to specifically work out when to put people into the diary, not just having this open free for all. Um, where, for example, if someone comes in and you're like, they are perfect, I
Mhm.
want to get them in straight away, versus someone who could be great. Whereas, I'm kind of playing that balancing act of time. I tried Calendly, I got calls at stupid hours on weekends. That was my fault. I didn't set it up properly. And then I tried it again, and then no one could see my diary, probably me again on the setting up. So I just stick to, I'm in control of my diary now.
I love
So I am
this.
uh I am
Love
I'm on the camp of don't use it.
that is hilarious. I think there. to your own admission, I think there's a little bit of user error, but
Oh,
um,
100%. I will
yeah,
never shy away. I think Calendly can be a great tool.
yeah.
He and I, or she and I, just did not find the method of working together.
You guys didn't vibe. That's okay. That's okay. I mean, I think that it's stuff like that though, right? Like recruiters are playing calendar Tetris with
Mm,
hiring managers, hiring teams. So anything to give them a lift so it works and it actually makes their life easier, I'm down to do.
yeah.
Or if it gives a level of data and insights that make them more strategic, more apt to absolutely like actually be able to advise, um, access to the best candidates, things like that. I mean, I could name tools for sure, but I definitely, the first sort of price of admission for me is how does this make my recruiter's life easier? And eliminate a level of administrative burden that just gets in the way. You know, I want them talking to people. I want them using their gut. I want them, um, you know, building relationships with their hiring managers and candidates, and then, using that instinct to make the right decisions. And if there's a tool that gets rid of all the other noise, then I'm usually interested in at least learning about it. With the AI tools, I would say I'm more skeptical.
Mm,
I think everyone should be, and that doesn't mean I'm against them. It just means I don't believe AI should be at the center of decision making or judgment when it comes to people in jobs. I think that, again, it's a very personal connection. Number one, sure, I think there's a ton of AI tools that are about like skills assessment. That's great. That's fine. But the reality is, and Eden, you know this, it's like you want to work with people that you have trust with, that you vibe with, that, and I'm not talking about like getting a cocktail. I'm just saying, like, I believe we will accomplish great things together, right?
yeah.
I have heard people say, "Oh, I want to get a beer with them." I know that they probably mean like I would trust them. And I think that, we could accomplish great things together. But, I don't think a tool is going to be able to tell me, well, we've scoured the World Wide Web and we found these three people and you should offer one of them. Like, no one's going to do that. I mean, if you are, good luck. But at the end of the day,
There
we're
are
working,
there are
you know,
absolutely companies doing this, and that scares me a little bit. Shall we get to the nitty gritty of AI and that side? So 90% of my work is like companies up to 10 people. So
Mhm.
working with the founders, and they always say, look, we've got this AI tool. I'm like, cool, great, I'll work alongside it. I don't mind. But I'll send you profiles that you have to trust me when I say speak to them because I've spoken to them. The CV is crap. A prime example is actually there's a guy I spoke to this morning who he's a CEO, hands-on co-founder on the ops side and 15 on tech side. CV is diabolical. He hasn't had to write it for 2 years, but he's got an amazing background. And I'm speaking to the CTO of the company he's applying to. I'm like, trust me, you're gonna love him. If I send you a CV, you're gonna reject it. Like the AI will absolutely have missed that profile because he doesn't have buzzwords. He doesn't have anything, and his title is CEO. And it's like you have to kind of read between the lines, and that's the part of AI where I'm super skeptical because it's the art of recruitment is finding people, and then the science behind it, in my opinion, is making that judgment of based on what I know, based on what I see, based on the information I have about that company, their tech stack in my world, are you a good potential match? And I'm yet to find a platform that I trust to use consistently. I've tried or dabbled a few of them. Juicebox was okay. I know a few other companies have done pretty well off the back of it,
Mhm.
but I'm in the camp of skepticism still. But I also am mindful. We've got companies in your position, that you've worked with that obviously have big budgets. Mostly, I imagine. You can look at these tools, you can make that decision, and maybe the pounds and dollars and euros aren't as strict as what you'd have in a smaller company. So if companies don't necessarily have budgets for your greenhouse, your Ashby, your juice box, your LinkedIn recruiter, how can they still build like these effective systems that are going to allow them to do more with less when they don't have tens of thousands at their disposal straight away?
Yeah. Um, I think there's a few things, and I just want to go back real quick and touch on what you just said too about the tools and where people are maybe over indexing on decision making. The art of recruiting is in just what you said. It's in the relationship and it's the art of human connection. And I think many people, I'd put myself in this camp, I'd put you in this camp, over the last 6 years with COVID and everything it did to create like a distributed workforce, has created an environment where you need to have built a skill to pick up on the tangibles and the intangibles, the things that are said and the things that are unsaid. And only a human can do that. It's the twitch in the eye, it's the scratch on the nose, it's the shift in the seat. Those are all telltale signs of, truth, how someone feels, and when you're speaking with a candidate or with a hiring manager, you're going to be able to tell, is this going to be a good match? Skills aside, is this going to be a good match? Will they vibe? And that matters, right? No one works. You think about in life, some of the best teams, Jonathan Ive and Steve Jobs, they trusted each other. I could go on and on. Yeah. So I would say that I experienced this in the last two companies where I was working for proper startup. So at Abnormal, we were 500, we scaled to about 650, and then back down by the time that I left. That was the beginning, I think, of what we all saw as efficiency times.
Mhm.
And then when I joined OneTrust, there were a series of contractions and efficiency calls. Do we have the right people, the right seat in the right bus? And we don't have the budgets. And so the CFO had a philosophy around zero-based budgeting, which basically meant you're not getting more money. So you're
Right.
either going to get less or you're going to stay where you are. So I fully relate and fully understand. And I would say, if you're in that situation, here's how I thought about it. And here's what worked for us. And we developed a killer team that produced a different level of recruiting enablement, performance, partnership, new programming, efficiency gains, and decrease things like time to fill and increase things like offer acceptance rates. And I would say that, actually happily say that I think the number one thing again goes back to, do you have the right people?
Mhm.
When I first took over the team at OneTrust, the model of the team was strange to me because there was a head of America, then there was a head of international. But when I looked at the situation and I said, well, who's accountable to executing here? There was no one throat to choke. The head of international was in the meetings, the head of Amer was in the meetings, I was in the meetings, the head of HR was in the meetings. I was like, why are all these people in this meeting around headcount execution? And so this goes back to, for me, people, process, and systems. Do you have the right people in the right org design to execute the work? You don't need for heads of a department to execute on R&D recruiting. You need a head of R&D recruiting to be the throat to choke globally. And every company is structured a little bit differently. If you're a
Mm.
behemoth, which I don't think that's the audience here, but then maybe you do have a head of international, fine, whatever. But still, what are
And
people accountable for?
they would still be the person accountable if it falls under their remit, you would
Yeah.
imagine.
And and I think that's where you've seen so many companies reduce and contract, is there's too many bloated roles. The
Mm.
question is, what is this person accountable for? What do they execute? Who's the throat to choke? You should have one throat to choke for any executable deliverable, not just a DRI. DRI became this thing where it was like, I don't know, DRI is a figurehead. I don't think companies that are smaller are able to operate with like just like DRI. It's like, who's the accountable person here? Who's the one person that's the throat to choke on the execution here? And have they designed an org that can get it done? So people, right? Do I have the right people that are going to help execute this plan, that is responsible and accountable for executing that plan, that when things go wrong, that's my person. And then processes. So I would say that like when they don't have the budgets and the capacity and they need to be more efficient, as a head of TA or whatever, your department is, even HR, I'd say take a good hard look at, do these processes add to the complexity or do they simplify? And a key question I always ask myself is, who are the decision makers in this process? I worked at a company very recently that would have 3 approvals in finance for a rec to be open. Now, if finance is doing their planning right with headcount to begin with, there should be 1 person. Shouldn't be 3. You don't need 3 checks and balances if you have the right process and the right system for headcount planning, right? It was like a waste of time.
What was
So
their justification though? Was it trying to keep an eye on the money?
they didn't have a good reason, to be honest.
Uh,
It
with
was
ego.
like the department, the person in the department, then the SVP, then the CFO. I think the CFO had a little bit of agita, just given the fact that prior the company was in a bad situation, let's
Um,
say. And so he felt tremendous responsibility. Like usually people are coming from a good place. So to be fair, um,
yeah,
you
it's a
know,
control there's a reason behind it, not just, hey, I'm a control freak, but
yeah.
rules up shit creek and we need to watch it a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that's also where there's the opportunity to build trust. So we were able to do that and eliminate at least one of those approvals. So we went from 3 to 2, which I took as a win. I was like, okay, whatever. It's a huge. Um, but I think that you have to just get curious in that example about, like, well, what are they trying to solve, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but again, when you're designing processes, like what's going to make things easier while still enabling us to, in that example, hit our financial targets and not overspend, and some of that is a process, some of that is a system. We also stood up something called position management through Workday, which was really effective. In You start with a plan that's literally locked, things you cannot change. Finance agrees, ops agrees, HR agrees, TA is agreed and informed on that. Then you execute the plan. So you don't need 50,000 iterations on approvals again and again and again. So I think you have to look at those things. And then also systems. Do we have systems that are enabling us to move quickly? Do we have 5 different project management systems? Do we have one? How are we streamlining? At my last company, we worked very closely with the IT team to say, here are our problems. Do we have a system internally that can help us solve them? And in many cases, the answer was yes.
Mm.
So we removed a system, and I don't even want to name it because I actually love the product and the tool, but it was a project management tool. And then we just used Jira, which we had already had and were paying for. So I think it's question, and honestly, it did the same thing. But I think it's questions like that you have to ask yourself, is like, we need to be more efficient. We're all owners in the company. We have equity. And so how do we make smart strategic decisions while enabling us still to get the work done in an efficient and cost effective way?
So it's not necessarily go out, buy everything, all these fancy new tools, but being smart. How can we help improve each part of the process, get
Mhm.
clarity? I really love that lock-in element. Um, One thing that I try to do with the hiring managers and teams in our onboarding calls is very much the same, where it's like, this is what you want. Where can I flex so I don't have to keep coming back to you? We'll run that search. And then if you're starting to see people that are kind of falling into the next searches, I've ran the search. I don't have to just keep coming back every few weeks going, can we do this? Can we do it? We just get everything outlined. And then we know exactly where the final cutoff point is in regards to the searches. So I love the fact you get everyone's buy-in. That's I think that helps when you have that stall element that you was
Yeah.
talking about. If you've got everyone kind of fully aligned to that and everyone signs off on that, then as a recruitment function, you know exactly where you stand. And that's we can deal with that. I think at recruitment in general, there's a lot of we think people want this, we think they want that, but we're never inside their heads. But if you can get people to almost sign it away and go, no, you've got it right, that's what I want, job done. You've got an actual
Yeah.
clear requirement. Um, I'm curious, right? So people listening won't necessarily be in a leadership capacity. Some will, some won't be. But as you say, we're all business owners. Yes, you had equity. Not everybody had the opportunity for that in some of the other teams that listen. but we are still in theory part of the company. So what is the number one thing that you would recommend anyone who's listening? There's a lot to take in, but once they've put the podcast down, the one thing you would recommend that they can do, try, implement to help move the needle forward, what would that be?
Well, I guess I'd ask a clarifying question on that, if you don't mind.
Always a
It's,
recruiter.
yeah, always a recruiter. Move the needle forward on what?
Doing more with less.
Doing more with less. I think it's important, no matter your role, no matter your title, no matter your scope, to have a mindset of acting like an owner. And that is something that was well ingrained in me during my time at Apple and at LinkedIn, where we also had agency to make some decisions and be accountable for our decisions to do what was right for the company. And
Mhm.
this notion of a mindset of company, team, self. So we focus on making decisions on what's best for the company, then what's best for our team, and ourself is last, because we exist here together as a team to help this company be successful. And so I think when you take that mindset,
Mm.
and if that mindset is, the walk is being walked through all the leaders, it's not just talk on the walls, because I've seen that too.
Yeah.
I didn't see that at LinkedIn. I feel like they were probably one of the best companies ever about like really living the values. Um, you then empower people to do what's right, even when no one's watching, because that's just what's expected behavior.
Yeah.
And I think if you have that mindset, you're able to see something that is broken and not working and go fix it. You don't need your manager to always give you approval to do something. Just do it. If it's the right thing to do it and show them that you solved a problem, and show them how you saved either time or money or improved, efficiency, or your way of, getting whatever it is that you do done. I think that that
Mm.
is really important. And that's what people are looking for right now. That's this whole thing with AI. People are just looking for a way to do things better and more with less. And so be that person that does that. And you're not going to necessarily design yourself out of a job. You're in fact probably going to give yourself job security, because you've demonstrated value in how you think about company, team, self.
I love that. I might steal it. I'll
Steal
credit
it.
you. But I love that.
I
I
steal.
think, yeah, fair. I mean, sorry, Apple or LinkedIn, whoever had that as the element, but yeah, I mean, you've absolutely nailed it. I mean, that is exactly what everyone's looking for. It's not who's the best salesperson, the best engineers, who's going to really help the company when shit hits the fan. Are you going to run for a brick wall for us? Are you going to help rebuild that wall after? That's the things that teams are looking for. Mary, I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing, the experience and some of the stories you've got with us. If someone wants to pick this up a little bit further, pick your brain a little bit more, where is the best place that they can find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I am really committed to connecting with people and responding. So feel free to send me a DM, reach out. Yeah. And I'd love to be able to help and offer any perspective that I can. And thank you for having
Perfect.
me. This was so fun. I always love when we get to talk.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.